Alright guys, Hatch coming again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. On the day that we were waiting for yesterday, OpTic Texas finally deciding after their World Championship win to turn on the streams for practice. The World Cup is coming up in just a few days' time. Only a couple of days of practice remaining, but they did take advantage of their opportunity against Boston and against the Subliners, or Cloud9 as they're going to be at the World Cup next week, to absolutely decimate the competition. Is it seemingly true that Dashy has been unleashed after finally getting his ring? Very much interested to your thoughts in the comment section below, because lots of drama last night. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, let's just dive straight in. Firstly, quickly on the Boston side, because not exactly sure what the full story is behind the scenes. There's been various discussions as to whether these guys actually have been kicked out of their apartment, exactly what those apartments really were. As in, was it actually a living space for the players, or were they just kind of settling there to prepare for the World Cup? This type of stuff. And there's also been some debate as to whether the decision has fully been made yet. It's clearly not good. I mean, look, we talked about it yesterday. Lots of the problems with Boston and Oxygen Esports and elsewhere. But yeah, it seems like they will indefinitely cease operations while the board of directors evaluate the best possible path forward for the business. So it seems like it's not necessarily over yet, but it's basically over. But it does still seem the Boston guys are practicing. They're going to be there at the World Cup in just a few days' time. And well, let's have a look at how exactly we got to this point. So OpTic have been teasing this now. Kenny said a few days ago that he wants the boys to turn on the streams and actually play some, scrims on stream, which is very rarely done outside of like the first couple of weeks of the game. Usually what happens, the game drops in this year, it's end of October, sometimes it's start of November. There's tournaments for the next couple of weeks, and then shortly after that, well, even sometimes day one, the scrims start up, right? The practice between the pros, and usually the pros will stream that for 2-3 weeks, depending really when the first event is. Then the streams go off, and then everyone kind of locks in for the season. At this point though, the season's done. Well, it's kind of done, but it's kind of not done. Everything that was there on the table was there at the World Championship. Now they've got this additional event of the World Cup, and OpTic, of course, feeling very confident. They started their practice a couple of days ago now, and yesterday was like day 3 or whatever of them actually getting back into scrims on a game that they just won the World Championship on. I'm sure are feeling mega confident on, and they were playing last night with just absurd confidence. Now, the reason why, there's a couple of reasons why we don't see this usually. One of them is that you don't want to give anything away to the opposition that might be watching. The other one is that it can potentially affect the way that you play the game. There's like a general feeling that maybe if you know that the streams are on, are you going to play a bit different? Are you necessarily going to play for the win as much? Or even not even for the win, but let's say you're trying to practice something specific, a P3 to P4 rotation on a certain map. You might want to deliberately give up the hill time on P3 so you can try and make the rotation probably work to P4. You might not do that if the streams are on, because then you might lose. And for example, as we're going to see in the coming minutes here, Dashy dropping 50. Unfortunately, we don't have his POV, but were there moments where Dashy was playing for kill to try and drop 50? I don't know. Not like it matters, but it's for this specific circumstance. But this is just like the general reason why the streams might stay off, is because, and especially if there's, the chat there, people are commenting in the chat, that might be a bit of a distraction. Are you able to be 100% focused and locked in with that being the case? Maybe not. But anyway, for this specific circumstance, OpTic are obviously enjoying playing the game again, going into the World Cup. They've won the World Championship. They feel like, what's the harm in turning on the streams for a day or so and, showing their progress and how things have been getting on. So it's really cool to see for the community, right? It's, great to witness this. I think we saw Attach and others stream in their practice a few days ago now when they were getting into things with their roster change, with Fame coming in for Johnny for this event earlier than OpTic have been getting into it. But as Shotzzy says, scrim in New York, tune in. Now, to be fair, this was the second scrim set of the day. They played Boston first, or as some people are calling them, the homeless, which I thought was a little bit too outrageous to put on the thumbnail. But we'll see the stats here in a second. I don't think they're actually like getting made homeless. I don't know exactly the full story on that one. But hopefully things are okay. And I know that most people in the comments yesterday were saying that it's got to be some sort of 30-day like eviction thing. So I don't know. We talked about all the Boston stuff yesterday. These though were the maps they played against Boston. So game 1 here on the 6-star, they take the dub 250, 230 or so. Game 2 was pretty comfortable, 250, 127. This is pretty funny. I'll share the clips over the coming minutes here of Pred, because he was in the chat talking all sorts of trash, right? So you know how it goes with this guy. Obviously, this team is high on confidence right now. Dashy, by the way, was the standout performer by far of this scrim. And that was kind of interesting because it's not like that was true at the World Championship, right? At the Champs, Dashy was I wouldn't say necessarily the weakest performer, but, you know, Shotzzy and Pred were doing the damage, really. Kenny turned up, Dashy turned up and had their moments, but it's not like Dashy was absolutely frying. He was just doing his job, getting the hill time right, securing the rotations, and getting done whatever was actually necessary for the team to win. This scrim set, though, Dashy was him, like, beyond belief. And it has raised the question, and I honestly talked about this after he won Major 3 this year, because I felt like Major 3 this year was a bit of a hurdle for Dashy to win. He hadn't won in a couple of years, lots of pressure was on, there was lots of talk as well about OpTic this season. If things didn't work out, is Dashy going to go? Because you could make the argument for that being the case, right? If OpTic didn't win Toronto, and of course, if they hadn't won the World Championship either, you can look at this OpTic team and say, well, you know, Kenny came in, clearly provided some positive attributes, and Dashy's the common denominator, really, in the failures over the last couple of years. Whether that's a justified perspective or not, there was lots of pressure on Dashy to deliver towards the end of the season. Winning Toronto, I think, was part of that, but you could definitely tell that the World Championship meant a lot as well. I mean, he was clearly nervous in that World Championship Grand Final, didn't have his best series, he admitted that, but now he's got over that, right? Dashy's now a World Championship winner, his spot on OpTic is now secured. There's, you know, should be at least no more drama, no more controversy as to whether Dashy's going to stay or going to go. The Rambo stuff is now passed. So in terms of Dashy's career and the questions and the hurdles that he's gone through over the last several years with OpTic Texas, that's now, you know, all over, theoretically, in the past, and lots of those questions have been put to bed. So in many sense, is that going to unlock Dashy? Because I thought winning Major 3 might do it to some degree, but certainly getting a ring is, I think, going to maybe unlock Dashy to get to new levels. Now that pressure is taken off him, you can debate that. Now, this is a scrim set we're talking about here, so we'll actually see some proper matches to see whether this is true. But there was a bit of talk about whether this was fair or not. Every map, by the way, that OpTic played, they seem to just kind of get better and better. This map, Dashy has 152 seconds in the hardpoint, 32 in 20. They win at 250 to 172. Pred, by the way, was talking some trash on, you know, Snoopy, already that entire team. Are you guys playing to win and all this stuff? And there was another clip as well where he was shooting Snoopy's body and talking some more trash we'll get to here in a second. This was the sub base. They won at 250, 149. As I say, they were just getting better and better. And the final map, or at least I think it was the final map they played of this rotation, was the Vista, that they won 250, 182, but Dashy drops 50 in 20 he went. So I have a hard time believing that he was absolutely 100% playing for the win here, because, you know, obviously Boston got a lot of points. But and so, like, this is one of the reasons why you won't always stream the practice. But what it does show that OpTic are just mega confident in their play right now, and for Dashy to drop 50 kills on the Vista with 108 seconds in the hardpoint was, you know, just goes to show the levels that we're currently working here with for this roster. So yeah, lots of reactions to this. People, of course, are watching it live being like, oh, are we serious right now? Dashy's just dropped a 50 bomb of these guys' heads. It ain't looking good. And although the bookies might not necessarily have it this way, clearly OpTic, you know, in many people's eyes, should be the favourites for the World Cup, given they just won the World Championship. And it seems like, having got back into practice over the last couple of days, they're already right back to form, right? Because that was a question. Teams like Boston, teams like Minnesota Rocket or G2, teams like the same organisation, right? They're representing G2 at the World Cup. Let's say, you know, Vegas or London or teams like this. Okay, not even London anymore. Ravens, Carolina, whatever. They've been practicing now for a good couple of weeks, really. They practiced shortly after the World Championship. So there was a feeling that the top teams, would it take a couple of days to get back to where they were? Well, maybe it did. But all of a sudden, OpTic are just frying Boston. Now, the control, however, might take a bit more practice, because this was actually quite a big talking point of the World Championship, was how OpTic's control would look, certainly on like a high-rise or an invasion. And high-rise control just isn't really OpTic's map, and we see it again right here. Purge actually has a really good one, 32 in 23. They did win the invasion control in around 5. Shotzzy drops 41 on this one, and then they surprisingly lost the Karachi here. Look, to be fair, at this point, they've already won the first 5 maps of the series, and I can't imagine they were taking it 100% seriously all the time. There was no comms, by the way, for these scrims, so it was literally just the gameplay and everything associated with that. But good on the Boston boys, at least getting a couple of maps on the board here. These were, by the way, the numbers. So OpTic versus the Homeless, which is, you know, quite the violation, to be fair. But the hardpoints, 5-0 to OpTic. Dashy was averaging a 1.6 over those 5 hardpoint maps. Pretty ridiculous. And then the control, despite the fact that they actually lost 2-1, Dashy had a 1.3. So he had a ridiculous series. Purge had a great one in the controls, at least, as well. And then they continued onwards. Then they played the Subliners. And before we get into this, I'll just share a couple of clips.
Yeah, we have my desk is like one of those big ass countertops from IKEA, so she has a shit ton of room on the side. She always comes in here. OpTic tweet. Someone link me, Joe.
Confirming next target. Stand by.
I'm her friend.
Move to the hard point.
You're not Shotzzy. Relax, bro. Chat, he just said you're not Shotzzy. Relax, bro. In game chat. I don't know if my webcam is covering where it was. AG, he just typed that mid map. Yo, Champs has these guys on a completely different level.
So we saw what Simp had to say yesterday, that Subliners practice has actually not historically been that good. So it is interesting to hear this. And even OpTic themselves earlier in the season, when they were talking about their best competitors in practice, they said that, yeah, it's FaZe, it's Toronto, and then it's kind of everybody else. And that, to be fair, was while the Subliners were still playing not great fundamental COD, when they would, you know, basically outslay on Invasion Hardpoint and still lose. Nowadays, or at least over the last couple of months, going into the World Championship, they did seem to get better on that aspect, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are, you know, still a good scrim team. Maybe they're not. They're obviously good on LAN and good in online league matches, but for some reason, Subliners, apparently their scrims just aren't that good. And OpTic were taking advantage of that, to be fair, because they basically just slammed them in all the maps here. Like, they just came in, and of course, this is Cloud9, the team that came second at Champs. You got to wonder as well, what happens to this type of team if they go to the World Cup and don't do so well? You know, it's going to be quite fascinating to see. But Kenny this time, 34 in 20. Dashy was only 23 in 20, but he had almost 3 minutes in Hill. 2 minutes, 34 seconds in the Hill there from Dashy, 11 defends. So, you know, Dashy was absolutely frying, and he was still getting the hill time that he's been doing over, you know, in recent times. So I think that's kind of a scary sign, that if it is true, this whole theory that old Dashy's now been unleashed in some aspects, it's a pretty scary sign, because Shotzzy and Pred were not exactly slouching around at the World Championship, and neither was Kenny. And if Dashy's now even better, then who knows what happens there. The Karachi was 250-244, very close fought game here. The Rio was 250-194. OpTic won this one as well. Good map here from Pred. Dashy again topping the scoreboard with the most hill time, kills 28, deaths 21. They did, however, lose the sub base. I think they were up pretty big time here, and they just started kind of messing around a little bit. So they do eventually lose this one. Sib goes 42 in 27 to get the win. So clearly still a competitive couple of teams, a competitive scrim set, but OpTic, I think, will be very satisfied the way this went. I don't know if they're going to turn the streams on again today, but I mean, look, he had 50 kills, Dashy, in that scrim. They might decide, all right, that's enough streaming, because realistically, today's Friday, they've got Saturday, they're probably flying Sunday or Monday, and it's obviously a pretty long flight. I imagine they want to get there at least a day or two early, because the jet lag is probably going to be pretty mega from, you know, coming from the States. I think it's only 2 hours ahead of UK times. That isn't so bad, but in large part, it's, you know, could be a potential difficulty for those boys. I imagine they want to fly early, so probably their scrims are not long for this well. They're probably not going to practice for too many more days, OpTic, and the other teams as well. But the way that they played last night, they've not lost a single centimetre from where they were at the World Championship a couple of weeks ago. So very much interested your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.